It's always comfortable in current affairs to return to things that are understood, understandable, and reassuring. A good example of this, and appreciated all over the world, is the enshrinement of Martin Luther King as an American historical figure of singular importance to our um, social norms of dissent and change for several reasons, some of them clear and always present, and others far more obscure. Now, I don't want to be conditioned to put a box around Dr. King so that he sits in a particular place with a big statue and then nothing goes forward or backwards from there. It's finished statement. I prefer to be engaging of the fact that, for example, his presence was in the hand that took my hand, Ralph Abernathy's, one day at the University of Pittsburgh. Reminded me of what they used to say about Luciano Pavarotti. God kissed his vocal cords. I've heard him sing. And Ralph Abernathy's hand was profound, powerful, as though God had kissed it. If you look at the situation that Oliver Stone makes clear about in the Ukraine, you realize that with both sides fighting the way they are, other things cannot be reasonably resolved. So if there are militants on both sides, they have a common enemy, being civilization. Now, one of the things that's most troubling about Oliver Stone's research, which everyone who has a chance should watch, Interview with Putin, 4 parts, is that snipers, right-wing snipers, were shooting both sides to escalate the violence in the Orange Revolution, much as right-wing snipers picked off Kennedy and King. It's as simple as that. And what these sides have done is say, well, the right-wing snipers then therefore benefited me more. Now, American executive privilege is dominated by Joseph Biden, who sees an opportunity in misfortune to reassure our collective ranks of our privilege. Martin Luther King was clearly on the side of American civil rights, but he also was engaging of the human rights movement internationally. Biden is sort of save our troops happy. He goes marching off to a distant drummer in foreign places with military objectives to win, ha ha ha, without really measuring the human cost. And Putin seems to also be dismissive of human rights by his own admission. So people who are basic believers in human rights, but believe that civil rights have to be protected, appear to have struck a deal with right-wing snipers. I saw this sort of sadly in footage of the days following King's assassination, which was among sanitation workers. I've been to Memphis. I've seen where he died. I've even seen the picket table of a woman who was turned out of the Lorraine Motel to make a civil rights movement. She said Dr. King would have rather that it had been a motel for the poor. These questions are very difficult ones to resolve. So what right-wing snipers have done for the Green Party is say, we'll pick off elements of our society to advance the program. Now, there's nothing we can do to turn back the clock on these matters. I've been warning that this was in process for several decades, and I've been ignored. The reason I've been ignored is because the Ivy League of New York City, people like Louis Lapham, set the tune. Well, if you're so big and idealistic, then you won't mind if we drive you into homelessness and rape your girlfriend. Then you won't mind if John Schulman steals all the books from the library. And then you won't mind if we make you deaf as a laugh to amuse momentum building queers in Seattle. Then you won't mind if we poison you in the mouth and chemically castrate you. Then you won't mind if we kill Cersei Kennedy. You see, Louis Lapham is a charming New York dandy who makes a sort of musical opera out of these right wing snipers. Now, when I think about that, is we do have to protect each other. But I'm a pedestrian. I know that the psychotic elements of American political consciousness don't follow me everywhere on the street every day. Occasionally, somebody turns on their lights and aims their car towards me to really scare me. But for the most part, you interact with people, they're dumb heads, they have messages they send, but for the most part, people are on their best behavior when it comes to ordinary civic norms. Now, whether that's a privilege of living in the United States or not is very open to debate. I've seen politics and civics in Bangladesh, and they look excellent for the most part. So I think we're making a mistake in deriding societies who are less privileged than us, supposedly, have fewer school massacres, very certainly, and different cultural traditions, without acknowledging that on a day to day level, they're perfectly peaceful. To exploit, for example, the Muslim stereotype of terrorism, it's pornographic sadism from which right wing lunatics get their kicks and has nothing whatsoever to do with the truth. It would be like saying that one of the school shooters is a patriot who represents the Star Spangled Banner, which some people believe, but it doesn't. Most of us realize that American civic norms are being distorted, that people are being lied to, that our basic civics is one and the same, to care about our children and to look after our commonwealth. We want drinking water that's healthy all over the United States and all over the planet. Biden has done a good job in making this a priority. We don't want to have any more of these Flint, Michigan catastrophes. It's absurd to think that people like me who live in the luxurious homes of Section 8 and have to commute by bus an hour to get to Chinatown somehow don't wake up saddened with thoughts of Flint, Michigan. So therefore, the honor society for the hooligans of the right-wing sniper clubs should poison it in the mouth for the croquet Register Corona. What I saw happen, and a couple of black honor students have agreed with me, is that after the Kennedys and Kings were killed, the drug heads came in with people like Raghu Kag, who reduced the corona and wrecked everything. And I think that there's a certain amount of truth to the idea that the Ukraine and Russia were trying to get along with each other peacefully and adapt to a new Europe when the rioters came for the sake of rioting and whipped everybody up. I say that from the presentation that was made by Oliver Stone. I know that that's disputed, but what isn't disputed is that there were right wing snipers shooting both sides. Pretty much everybody can see that from the newsreels and the reporting. Just as it's never been disputed that right wing snipers murdered Martin Luther King. It's never been deciphered properly. It's always seen as white versus black when that's not what it was. It was Civil rights extremism versus human rights common sense. Civil rights extremists cut a deal. Adam Clayton Powell, for example, used to laugh at Martin Luther King. These civil rights extremists had in mind advancing black workers in Detroit, getting ahead, having a black president, and serving in Vietnam. Duvall, who supported the AIDS attack, told me China was evil. China's just very big. If you look at the situation with Martin Luther King, the NAACP, without even reading what he had to say, shouted him into silence when he opposed the Vietnam War, saying he was compromising his people. They're the same crowd who see the Green Party as behaving honorably in picking off people like Circe Kennedy as a nitwit revenge for Tupac Shakur or whatever the hell happened. The truth is much more simple about the murder of Martin Luther King. He was killed by people who hated the idea of love between all human societies all over the world. And many black people felt that way at the time. They felt that it was a reasonable request that they serve in the draft and counterpicket Martin Luther King about the Vietnam War, which anybody with any sense can see was criminally insane. What the hell do you think we were doing there? And again, you're not supposed to say that because of these right wing snipers. What the hell is going on? You think America's going to sit still while our grannies are killed and they nutbags create a Gestapo that go into schools and murder our children? While the police stand outside going, oh, we'll give it an hour. What were they doing? With Dr. Strangelove, Oliver Stone, Dr. Licky Chops. What were they doing in that room for an hour? They was wondering, oh, I'm thinking of something else.